when my daughter-in-law forbade me from going to my grandson's birthday because I smelled bad. I changed the locks on my house and, no, there will be a party. I don't know how to start. I have read hundreds of posts here. But I sit down to write mine. I am not sure what information I should add and what I should leave out. I am 66 years old and I am a single man. I lost my wife 3 years ago, and since then, I have been alone. I am actually devastated. Next Sunday is my grandson's birthday, and my daughter-in-law has not invited me to the party. I didn't even know there was a party organized until my friend, who was her neighbor, told me that her granddaughter received an invitation card for my grandson's birthday. He didn't know that I hadn't been invited. We went for a walk together in the mornings. On our way to the walk, he told me about the party. It was shocking because I am very close to my grandson, and he also wants me his birthday next Sunday. When my friend told me about the party, I thought it was a small cake-cutting event with just the neighbor's kids, but my friend told me that the party was going to be big, and not only the kids were invited, adults were also invited. The invitation says the name of the child, +1. The invitation also includes a dinner. This was amazing, because my son is not well off financially to spend so much money on his son's party. I replied to my friend that he was exaggerating, but then he sent me a picture of the invitation card. He was right. The party looked big. It left me wondering why I wasn't invited to the party. Made me anxious to reassure him. I told him maybe they forgot to invite me, or maybe the invitation is on the way. It's still 12 days until the party, so my anxiety got worse and I went to see my grandson. When I arrived, I saw my daughter-in-law engrossed in her phone, while my grandson was playing alone on the lawn. I picked up and played with him, while my daughter-in-law watched me from the window. My daughter-in-law has always been resentful towards me. She has never liked me, neither me nor my wife. I really don't understand the reason behind her displeasure, but maybe she thinks we were inferior to her actually. She is from a wealthy family, but we are not rich, we are not poor. But we don't have as much money as her dad. Besides money, it is also a matter of social status. Her father is a lawyer, but I am only a mechanic and I have a workshop. Yes, she is proud of her father's money. So it is an empty pride because her father despises her and does not give her a penny, even when she needs it the most last year during COVID. When my son lost his job, his finances were greatly affected. She, as a housewife, only had one source of income. Losing that job was a blow very hard for them. They started living off their savings. But eventually, they also ran out. My workshop business also shrank during the lockdown due to COVID. However, I helped them in everything I could. But my finances were also tight. Their situation became so bad that they could not pay the rent of their house, and they received an eviction notice from their landlord. I lived alone, so I offered them to move into my house while I moved into the workshop. I have a 2-bedroom house with the kids' room. I could have stayed in my house with them, but I knew my daughter-in-law would be uncomfortable around me. That is the background situation of my situation. When I went to see my grandson this morning, I thought my daughter-in-law would tell me about her birthday plan, but to my disappointment, she didn't say a word until now. I was hoping she would have forgotten to invite me, but now it seems evident that she doesn't want me to be there. It breaks my heart to think what I did wrong to receive this treatment. I have always tried to make their lives comfortable, help them, and this is what I get in return. Update 1. Thank you for all the kind words you have. Reason we, in-laws, especially in our 60s, we are treated like third-class citizens by our daughters-in-law. It feels very lonely in this world. 60s really are a hard time. It's like too old to live and too young to die. I tell you, my friend, if you have a partner in your 50s and 60s, appreciate why you will miss her like hell. I never felt the need of a friend until I had my wife. But after her passing away, my life is so empty. Yesterday, my son called me and said he would let me have my grandson. They are going out shopping. Yes, I take care of my grandson for them because hiring a babysitter involves money, and here this old man offers them free service. They know how to exploit me emotionally, financially, and in every possible way. When they came back to pick him up, I asked my son, did they finish shopping for the party? My son's face turned pale. His car was full of stuff in the back seat, and some of the decorative things were sticking out the back window. He just ignored it and said, "Oh, no, there's no party. We brought some toys to the baby." That's all. He's not good at lying. I looked at him seriously and said, "I saw the invitation card they gave to the neighbors." Before my son could say anything, my daughter-in-law yelled, "And what are you angry about because you needed an invitation to a child's birthday party? You're a little boy. The way you defended him made me angry." I was furious. However, I responded calmly, "Watch your tone, ma'am." My son said he would visit me the next day to resolve the matter. I kept waiting, but he didn't show up. How naive of me to think he would come to apologize for his wife's behavior and ask me to join the party. "I know what you think, old man fool." Yes, that's me. I was wondering how they could handle the expenses of such a big party. Then I realized that they were organizing a party with my money last month. My son borrowed money from me to pay his car payment. He said he had defaulted for 2 months, and now the bank was chasing him for payment. He promised to pay me back this month. Whenever he asks me for money, I know he won't pay me back. However, I lend it to him. I know I am lenient with him. But look at my situation. I only have one son that I can call family. I only have a few years left. What am I going to do with my money in the end? It will go to him. Why not give it to him when he needs it? Until now, I never asked him to pay back the money that I lent him. But today, I called him and asked for the money I lent him last month. I told him, "You promised to pay it back this month." "Right. So where is he?" He never expected his dad to ask him to pay the money back. I told him I want the money for this week. "How you promised?" He said what I stated. You heard him. Well, I want my money for this week. He came to visit me in the afternoon. I confronted him about the resentment his wife to me said she was aware but couldn't do much. I told him, "Of course, you can't force your wife to love me, but surely you can stop lying to me for money. I know you lied about the car mortgage to borrow the money for this birthday party too. I know this. Party is not just for the kids. Their parents are invited too, and that includes dinner. Really, you have so much money to feed your friends and neighbors, but not for me. Whose money are you using for the event after my outburst?" He said, "Are you mad? Why we didn't invite you? If that's so, it's not me. Sandra, my daughter-in-law, prepared the guest list," I yelled, "and you have no say in. That Sandra's decision is some kind of law that can't be questioned or changed. You're telling me that you're okay with your wife not inviting your father to your son's first birthday, and for no reason." He stayed silent with a gloomy face. What else could I do? He is too weak to open his mouth in front of his wife. Narcissist is helpless to defend himself in front of me because he needs my money. Sometimes I blame myself for not raising a strong son. Update 2. I was determined not to take any revenge, but guess what I did, Sandra? My daughter-in-law crossed all the limits of toxicity and manipulation the day of the birthday. I was sitting in a corner of my workshop drinking and getting bitter when I got a call from my son. I was so stupid to think that maybe his guilty conscience had surfaced, and he was calling to invite me to the party. Don't curse me if I say that I even bought the gifts for my grandson. I thought that if I was invited at the last minute, I would have to rush. I know that I surpassed all levels of desperation. I thought that even if I was not invited, I owed my grandson a gift, and I would give it to him the next day to dark my illusions. The call was to take care of my grandson. He had to leave, rushing to the office for some urgent work. He said Sandra had gone to pick up her parents from the airport at Hearing. This I lost my mind. I mean, her parents are flying in from 2 states away. But I am not invited, and I live a block away before I could say anything. He said he was already in his car, leaving the baby alone in the crib. So I should hurry up without thinking twice. I ran to take care of my grandson while I was playing with him. The phone rang. I ignored it a few times, but it kept vibrating. I thought it must be an emergency call. So I answered. This was Sandra, thinking I was talking to my son. She was calling him to give him some instructions about the decorations. I had been calling him on his phone, but he was not answering. He got angry. Hearing my voice, I told him I was not invading his house. Her husband had to rush to the office urgently, so he requested me to take care of his son. She yelled at me, asking me that I should leave the house because I didn't want his parents to see me. I told him, "How do you want me to leave the child alone at home?" He said that in an hour the child could manage alone until then, but he didn't want me to be present at his house when his parents arrived. He said, "I smell like fuel and oil, and then my hands and clothes are dirty with grease. I look dirty, and he doesn't want his parents or anyone to see me in his house." I felt humiliated by this. It was outrageous. I cried like a baby holding my grandson in my arms. I can't explain to you how terrible I felt at that moment. I quickly got up to leave, because if he came and saw me there, he would tear me apart mercilessly as I closed the door behind me. An idea came to my mind. It's my house. Yes, that's right. I gave them my house to live in as a gesture of goodwill, and no, they don't pay me rent. I thought, ma'am, I'm no longer a doormat. I quickly called my workers with toolboxes. They helped me change the locks on the house. They packed their clothes and other belongings and threw them on the front porch. They just threw all their clothes into some boxes that were in the workshop. All big items like furniture and electronics were mine. They didn't bring any after that. I held my grandson and walked around the front lawn waiting for Sandra to arrive. As soon as I saw her car pull into the driveway, I walked over, handed the baby to her through the window, and walked to my workshop. She sat the baby in the car, or maybe she gave him to her parents and came after me screaming. She yelled at me, asking why I was still here when she had asked me to leave. I didn't even bother to look at her or respond. I just said, if you need help getting your stuff out, call me, before she could react or understand. I left. Just a few minutes later, my phone was blowing up with her calls. I ignored them. Then she sent me voicemails, asking why the lock wouldn't open and why her stuff was lying outside the house. I laughed at her texts. I thought, woman, take a hint. You are homeless. I went to my workshop and I sat in the entryway. I knew she or my son would show up soon, fool. And there she was. She came towards me in a hurry. I said, before you get any evil thoughts, let me tell you. There are cameras installed everywhere and they are fully functional. She was screaming and basically repeating the same thing because the house wouldn't open. I told her I changed the locks and the key is inside the workshop. It smells of oil and grease and other annoyances. Do you want to touch that key? She was dumbfounded. She pulled her hair and screamed, asking why I changed the locks. I stared at her and replied seriously, remember that house is mine? I did a favor by letting everyone live there. She interrupted me and said, then why did you throw our stuff outside? I told her because I changed my mind. Now I don't want you to live there. She stomped the ground. She went back to her car and left. I knew this wasn't over after a while. My son appeared with red eyes from crying. That is his manipulation technique. He said, Dad, please give us the keys. I promise, Sandra will be nice to you. She will apologize. I stopped him in dry. Seriously? Sandra will apologize to me. Where's her face lit up, and I asked if Sandra apologized. Would she give him back the house? I said, I don't know. I could consider it depending on how she does it. He got up to call Sandra, by the way. She spoke. It seemed like she was not ready to apologize. But within 10 minutes she arrived, started saying, look, I'm sorry. I said, wait. Let's sit inside the workshop and talk. She was reluctant to go in. But my son gave her a look and followed us inside, covering her face with a napkin. Her apologies seemed to be a favor to me. She said, okay, I'm sorry. I won't yell at you again. Give us the keys. My parents are waiting outside. They are tired from the trip. I was perplexed at her way of apologizing. I looked at my son with wide eyes. She continued, okay, I am. Sorry again, enough with the faces. Our guests will be arriving soon. We need to fix everything, and yes too. You can join the party, but please get dressed in new clothes. I could not stand her tone anymore. I stood up and yelled out, just get out of here and never show your face again. You will not have the house again. Not even when I die. Instead of apologizing for her behavior, she started yelling at my son. See, I told you, he won't listen. We should call the police. He pulls his hands away and yells at her back. That is his house. We can't call the police on him. The police will criticize us for mistreating him. They left the workshop yelling at each other. My friend who lived next door said that Sandra and my son came back and told their parents what had happened. I was trying to manipulate the truth when my son intervened and explained the whole truth. Her parents were heard yelling at her. Update. 3. My loser son showed up at my door again. It had been a week since he was almost midnight when I heard his knock on the door. I opened it and told him I had no business with him. He took my hands and started begging me to let him into the house. He said he had been living in the car for a week. You don't have enough money to rent another house with your income. It's hard to make ends meet even for household expenses. He started crying, saying he couldn't pay the rent. I told him, "Why don't you ask your spoiled wife to get a job?" He said she just doesn't want to work. It's considered a reward for him because she was out of his league. He burst into laughs. Of course. Then show your trophy to get bread. This old man has done enough for all of you. I told him your wife has always been narcissistic towards me. And yet I gave you all my support, gave up my house and lived in the garage because I loved you and wanted you to be comfortable. What did you give me in return? You allowed your wife to humiliate me. You don't have the guts to take a stand if you have a wife of gold and you sure can't displease. Then live with that gold and don't come to me for help. He tried his last card saying, "Please, Dad, give us the house for the sake of your grandson." I replied, "Enough of emotional manipulation. Don't you dare to blackmail me anymore until now." She extorted me for my money and my house, saying, "Dad, please don't do this for the sake of your son. Now that letter is not working. You are using your son to get your way. Get out of here. You are not going to get anything." The next day, he showed up with his wife and son. I said, "I will not accept an apology. No, it is about birthday invitations. Hatred is deep-rooted. She hates me for my work. She considers it insignificant. No, I will not allow anyone to make fun of my profession. Mechanic jobs may be dirty, and our hands may be stained with oil and grease, but they involve skills that you have. You are unemployed, just because you are beautiful, and your dad being a lawyer does not give you the right to humiliate others." She fell on her knees and begged for forgiveness. But I slammed the door in her face. No. I want to have no contact with that toxic woman and her spineless husband. I know it's not the end of the world for them to be kicked out of the house. Eventually, they will be able to rebuild their lives. I also know that they will never forgive me. In fact, they will make my grandson bitter about me. But it's okay. I've given enough of myself to be nice to my daughter-in-law. I've realized, the hard way, that even if you give your life, there are some people who will never appreciate you. Now I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being called a grumpy, selfish old man who kicked his unborn son and 1-year-old grandson out of the house to live on the street. The only regret I have is for my grandson. That little creature has no idea what kind of parents he has. He's living an uncomfortable life because of his stupid parents, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Update 4: my daughter-in-law tried to break into my house but to no avail, and the police took her away. After her last attempt at an apology, which as you had read was pretty pathetic. And she tried to break into my house. She came in the middle of the night, broke a window and wanted to get in. But being an old man, I am a light sleeper. So when I heard, I called the police. I didn't know it was my daughter-in-law, I just thought it was someone trying to rob me. I'm thankful that the only gun I have is in the workshop, because that could have been pretty bad. Back to the subject. Even if I had known it was my daughter-in-law, I would have called the police too. She had already gotten in and was looking for my door keys when the police arrived, and I turned on the lights. So she couldn't get away. They took her away, arrested for delayed trespassing. So he called my son, who then came to my house screaming in the morning for having done all this. According to him, my grandson can't be without his mother. He also asked me if I could take care of him while he went to try to get her out of jail. Although I don't know with what money she will. I told her absolutely not, and that I was thinking about calling Child Protective Services because they were clearly not being good parents. She eventually left, although that last one was not just an empty threat. I certainly think so. Plus, some commenters have suggested it before. Update 5. Well, there is good news and bad news in this update. Although none of it is bad, for me to start with, my daughter-in-law's father went to help his daughter. Although he was very upset, and not only because his daughter was in jail now, but the day they traveled for her birthday party. Everything was going on came out. So my daughter-in-law's father was very upset with her. He helped her get out of jail. But from what I understand, he cut off all contact with her later. I know, because my son told me this one day when he came to ask for the house back. So after he left later that day, I called Child Protective Services, who took her away. My grandson, and they gave him to me, who am the closest direct relative. I don't know what will happen now since this is temporary, but I am happy to spend time with my grandson. We even celebrated his birthday. Between us, where I could give him my gifts, He is too small to understand what is happening, although he perceives something.